So, Jimmy St. Louis, thank you very much for joining me on the Disenfranchised today. How are you doing?
I'm doing great, Ed. Thanks for having me. I appreciate the time.
Hey, no problem at all. And it's nice to be speaking on the podcast again since the Christmas break. It seems a little bit strange to me, but nice to see a smiling, friendly face on the other end of the camera today. So, thank you for joining me.
Yeah, thanks for having me. Yeah, the holidays are always a nice time to kind of, decompress and not necessarily forget about all these things we're doing, but maybe refocus a little bit. So it's nice to be back in the swing of things.
Yeah, exactly. Well, look, Jimmy, I want to kind of go straight into kind of some of the questions, and like I always do, I tend to start off with your career, really. So for me, it'd be really interesting to find out what was your first job in your career, and it can be as grand or small as you want. Don't worry about it. I'm just interested to find out what was the first.
Sure. I guess technically my first job was I was an NFL football player for the Tennessee Titans in Nashville, Tennessee. And I did an internship with Northwestern Mutual, a sales internship. So I guess that'd be kind of my my first career, my first internship.
Wow, cool. So what was that like? Was that traveling around the country playing games, or were you kind of more kind of training and staying kind of at the home ground for the time being? What was involved in that?
Sure, yeah. So for me, sports were always just kind of a major part of my life, and I went to Auburn University and then a school called Murray State University where I played football there and had a decently fun career. Football was not always going to be like a long 10-year career for me. That wasn't really in the cards or my ambition. I really wanted to go and work up on Wall Street in New York City, and that was my longer term goal. But right out of college, with the chance to go and play a professional sport, it was a fun stint for me and a really nice time of life. A decent amount of traveling around. Of course, it's pretty intense, especially when you're fighting for a job every day. But it was a great experience.
Yeah, I can imagine. So what? How or when did you end up sort of leaving the NFL and moving into the business world?
Sure. So after my last year of college in 2005, I had I received my MBA at the time and was working on a master's in finance. And like I said, had the wanted to move up to New York. So I actually was training for football up in New York, working, doing an internship up there at Deutsche Bank. And I was back and forth, kind of on and off for a 2.5 year period.
Right. Okay. So what kind of experiences have you taken away from that playing football? And are any of them kind of helping you in your life today?
Yeah, I think that just if you have a passion in something, whether it's sports or arts or literature, whatever that might be, business, that's going to teach you a number of things. The biggest thing I took away from sports really is there's a balance of course, time management. There's camaraderie. There's team. There's a teammates. There's the each person on that team plays a different role, and no role is too big or small to create the best system. And that's really what I think I took with me to the business career as well. It may not necessarily be the best player on the field that makes the difference. It may not necessarily be the best individual on your management team that makes a difference. Sometimes it's those individuals that are the nuts and bolts of the organization. And I think I took that approach with me and starting some of our businesses and from our team building aspects of things, and really worked to take that concept of a good team to build our cultures within our organizations.
Yeah, it's interesting. It's a really good point as well about the teamwork. But I guess the coach has an important part to play as well, right? In terms of bringing those players together and finding the right place for them. So again, I guess that kind of translates really nicely into business as well. Is that something you've experienced?
Yeah, I kind of define coaching, I think, in a way that maybe a little bit different than how people define coaching at this very moment. So I think coaching is you're teaching the technical aspect of what you do. You're driving towards the mission, but you also are building a relationship with someone. You really care about someone. If you think about some of the best coaches, whether they're in professional sports and high school sports, those coaches that most people remember aren't the coaches that taught them how to, shoot basketball the best, throw the football the best, or kick the soccer ball the best. It's the coaches that cared about their lives and that helped them understand that, hey, there's also a bigger life off the field. There's your family, there's your other passions, there's your hobbies, there's the things that make you a rounded person, and they help you uh, accomplish those things as well. And then you realize that that person cares about you as an individual and not necessarily just about winning the game or what the business brings to the table for them. So I think that's really how I've taken away, from my sports careers, not necessarily in the NFL. I think that's a different type of environment in my perspective. You've got the teams that I think stand the test of time and they win consistently. I think they have relationships like that with their players. There's some teams that just can't seem to make it in the playoffs. They just can't seem to do well year in and year out. If you look at their cultures, a lot of time you'll start to realize there's some similarities there where people may not necessarily just feel a part of the team. They may not necessarily feel like they're a part of the family. And so to me, that's always been something that's been important in sports and in my business career, is to try to build those environments where people feel like they're a part of something bigger.
Yeah, I think that's really interesting. When I look back through my own career, I can think of a couple of places where I worked, and it wasn't a team kind of environment. I mean, recruitment, you can be quite siloed and have to focus on your own goals rather than that of the teams. And um, I've now experienced it a bit more, where being part of a team is really important, actually, and having that common goal. And I think it's the why, isn't it? Why are you all doing this? Why are you doing that small task that seems like it's going nowhere? Well, there's a reason, because it's a part of that bigger machine, like you mentioned earlier on. And without that one little task that you're doing, the whole thing could fall apart or not work so well. So making sure that everybody's bought into the common goal, the why you're doing what you're doing. Yeah, I can see that's really important, right?
Yep.
So moving kind of into your kind of your business career then. So I was looking through your profile on LinkedIn, actually, and I saw that you started with the Laser Spine Institute and became the COO for the brand. And I wondered if that's something that's tied into that sporting background of yours, or is that just a passion that you developed over time? Why move into that world?
Yeah, so I had kind of an interesting go at at healthcare, and be happy to walk you through it. So some things we're really proud of there. It was a really fun experience. So at the time, I was actually working up in New York, and we were working with an investment group, a family office out of Dallas, Texas, and they were looking to diversify their portfolio and to go into some areas of uniquely positioned healthcare concepts. So we were underwriting this concept with them, and we decided to work with them to help them launch a network of spine surgery centers. Essentially, it sounds like, okay, that's a traditional healthcare concept. Let's open up some spine surgery centers. But we really took the traditional healthcare model and we flipped it upside down. So if you think about traditional healthcare, there's a couple things that almost every practice practices. One is, when you open up your practice, you sign contracts with insurance companies. And then what happens there is then you are within a network and people can refer their patients into you. And that's how you build your patient base. We actually opted out of insurance altogether. So we charge on an out of network basis. Then we built out a patient advocacy team who is responsible for helping that patient get reimbursement from an out of network perspective. But because we were out of network, we had to market direct to consumer. And so actually, we were the first organization back then to market direct to consumer through Google AdWords in healthcare. And we started to build out this process where we didn't just have small clinics clinics all around the country where they're within, say, a 15-mile drive. We created this 5-day experience where people could get in a 5-day period their full comprehensive spine care that might have taken them a year and a half to get within the traditional healthcare network. Because of that direct consumer concept, we were able to fly people in from all over the country and all over the world to come in to get the workup, to get the diagnosis, and to have surgery and have that all done within a 5-day experience. And so we created this one-stop shop, super efficient, patient-centric, kind of hospitality meets healthcare concept where we just made it easy, and our procedure was unique. It was the only one of its kind at the time. Now everyone does it. We kind of pioneered the world of minimally invasive spine surgery. We grew that company from 9 employees to, at its peak, about 1,500 employees. We
Wow.
had locations all over the country. We drove as much as 275 million in annualized revenue there, and it just became a a massive success. And but most importantly, I mean, we did surgery on nearly 100,000 patients and just had tremendous success doing it. So that was just, for us, it was a lot of fun, very rewarding in terms of being able to help people and being able to make a difference in people's lives. Um, so after that, after we all kind of exited the company, a lot of us started a number of different healthcare concepts. Some went into surgery centers. Some were opening up, innovative treatment centers in a variety of modalities. I actually did a spinoff and opened up Regenerative Medicine Solutions, which was um, it's a stem cell and cellular therapy focus center. We opened up 5 locations around the country, focused on treating patients chronic obstructive pulmonary disease. And we were the first of its kind to do it utilizing cellular therapy. And we ended up treating about 10,000 patients. We had really great success, and we ended up doing a merger with a smaller public company a couple of years ago. But that's just kind of one of many different spinoffs that a number of people from Laser Spine ended up doing.
Yeah, well, it must be quite rewarding to see that you've had that kind of level of impact on people that are in need of those treatments and services. Is that something that was a factor of why you got into that type of work, or was that kind of a positive byproduct?
Sure. So my family have all been healthcare professionals. I was the only one who didn't pursue the medical school degree. So that was kind of in our blood, and I'd say inherent in us was the desire to help people. I even think back about my father when he was in medical school training or doing his residency or getting started and working in the emergency rooms, and the stories he would tell were driven around helping people. He told a story about had a sad ending, but just the things he did. One, I recall there was an accident, and he did everything he absolutely could for hours and hours to keep this patient alive whose family was in a different city several hours away, just so they could come and see them one more time. Right. And that's not
Yeah.
something that a lot of emergency room doctors are going to do. It doesn't mean that they don't care about people, but he just kind of had that extra level of passion of understanding, these are people with feelings, emotions, pain, and it can be easy to be desensitized to that. And he never was. He always really focused on that. And I'd hear him tell these stories. I even see them sometimes. And so I think it was a bit inherent in us to kind of be like, well, of course, if we start a business, it should be geared around helping people. Um, and that's the same thing I'm doing now, even with franchise 123. As we get into that, it's
Yeah.
geared towards trying to really solve a real problem. And that's the same thing I did with the Regenerative Medicine Solutions company. Also, we started with, let's create a concept that can solve a real problem and meet an unmet need, and then we can start to build our organization off of that basis.
Yes, I think it's interesting because that is, you could maybe call it personalization or something like this, couldn't you? But it's that personal approach, that actually caring about the person on the other end of the service, or on the other end of it, your adverts even. I think taking it away from the insurance companies straight off the bat, and trying to tap into those people directly. That's a form of personalization, right? So that I think it's interesting how you've taken that from your family that are in that medical profession, but you're still taking that kind of same level of personalization into what you're doing in business as well. And it looks like it's been paying off for you pretty well. So um, I've seen that you've got maybe a couple of other businesses that you've started up as well, since the Laser Spine Institute, the work you were doing there. So and I know a couple of those were franchised. So how did you kind of start those up, and why look at creating turning them into a franchise ultimately?
Yeah, so so yeah, complete coincidence when we we launched what was called the Sleep Apnea Treatment Centers of America, and I was actually just speaking at the World Medical Tourism Conference, and the a physician who had had a lot of success utilizing this unique uh, kind of procedure for sleep apnea, he came to us and said, "Hey, I would like to see if you could help me expand and grow this brand." And we, at the time, had launched a healthcare concept called Advanced Healthcare Partners. Advanced Healthcare Partners was geared towards finding that next really unique concept in healthcare and seeing if we can leverage our expertise around direct consumer marketing, business operations, customer service meets healthcare, and see if our model can work well within a number of other type of healthcare concepts. Jeff Silvera, the founder of the sleep apnea centers, contacted us and said we would like to see if you can help us do what you did with laser spine. And although we didn't have as much success there, what we did do is we helped him build out a franchise model. I served as the interim president for a year and a half of that organization. And that was our first go at franchising. To be honest, even when I started doing what I'm doing now, it didn't really even dawn on me that we had done franchising like this before. We learned the ins and outs. The one thing I did take away was I remember the process being a bit monotonous and kind of feeling maybe misguided, or feeling like, okay, here's the blueprint for how you franchise something. This is what it costs. This is how you do it. But I realized we weren't as focused on the quality of the business operations. It is more like franchising requires you to have this payroll, this accounting, this marketing. And so check, check, check. And so you can get the business open, as opposed to really focused on who are the best high quality partners to help you centralize your business operations as an emerging franchisor and help you be successful. So as we talk more about franchise 1, 2, 3, I can tell you about some how those lessons learned helped us within what we're doing now. But as it relates to sleep apnea treatment centers, it was really just a matter of him saying, "Hey, I'd like to franchise this business." And we said, "Okay, we'll be happy to help you."
Yeah. Okay. So you kind of learn on the job then, really, about franchising. Did you have any preconceived ideas of what franchising was before that was kind of put in front of you? Is it something you knew well, or just yeah
Sure.
learned it after they kind of suggested it?
Yeah, definitely dove in. I always try to consider myself an aspiring subject matter expert, right? So I love to read, love to research. Got a great network of people, of mentors. I feel like in almost any discipline in the world, could pick up the phone and call someone who has a high deal of expertise in something, and part of these larger networking groups like a young presidents organization, where you can pick up the phone and call or inquire with people who may have expertise and experience in things. And I really value working with a network of people to, one, provide value back to them where needed, and hopefully be able to receive some value in the form of knowledge from them. So as it relates to franchising, it was an on-the-job learning experience for sure. Definitely worked hard to surround ourselves with some good mentors in that space. I would tell you my perspective on franchising went from limited and narrow to a much more broad understanding afterwards. And I'd say, to answer your question, my perspective on franchising was, hey, it's, traditionally franchising are made up of restaurants and, food services, and this is the blueprint to do it. But when I started looking at the market and realizing there's a lot of replicable services out there and replicable businesses where you can have the blueprint, that blueprint, and then help people expand and pursue their entrepreneurial dream by giving them a brand that supports them in the areas that they may not necessarily have a passion for. Like, for example, if you can plug into a brand with great brand and name recognition that has a pipeline of leads or a pipeline of potential revenue, and you just need to, and you have a passion for being a good business operator and managing people, that's a type of uh, person that would be a good fit for franchising, right? Where they're, I
Yeah.
got, I always give the example of a bakery down the road and a husband and wife who say, wow, we have this incredible way to bake bread, but we don't know how to expand. We don't know how to market. We don't know how to do all these things. So now they can build out those core competencies and have other people go and do those things for them. And same thing on the other side, when you plug in as a franchisee, now you're plugging into a system where you can be passionate about a product, but you can have a great support system around you that helps you do those things that you may just not necessarily have a passion for as an entrepreneur.
Yeah, again, it's just what's right for that person, isn't it? I guess, as opposed to um, what's right for everybody else. For those individuals, like you say, they want to focus on the things that they enjoy doing, or the things that they're good at doing, the things that they're passionate about. So yeah, why try and do everything when you can kind of just stay in that narrow bubble and bring in other people? I like to think of franchising a lot of the time as outsourcing. So just outsourcing those elements that you don't enjoy doing to allow you to have greater success doing the things that you do love doing, right? So yeah, I can see where you're coming from completely with that. So let's move up to kind of today then. So tell us a bit about what you're doing in terms of your work.
Sure. So, in a bit of an interesting way that I got into franchising actually was totally unintentional. So, back in 2015 and 16, I was actually out in California making a run at the U.S. Olympic rowing team, and I was training
Oh,
there,
cool.
and had some downtime after having sold one of our companies, and so I was making a run at it and made a good run at it. Had a lot of fun. Finished third in the Olympic trials, and I was just enjoying that. But I knew I didn't want to go back for another 4 year cycle. That wasn't of interest to me whatsoever. So I was watching the Today Show, and uh, in the morning, and they had this feature. Al Roker was on there. Had this feature on this new emerging brand called City Row, and City Row is similar to like a Orange Theory type of concept, but they focus more on rowing, and they were beginning to expand as a franchise. And so I called them and said, "Hey, I'd like to ask about the territory rights in Florida. Maybe I could get the rights to open up 5 units or so." And as we started to learn more about one another, they said, I think you might first enjoy talking to our managing partner and one of our founders, a guy named John Rachi. John is a pretty experienced guy in franchising. He's been with Krispy Kreme, with Domino's, and now he's got a company, Franworth, which essentially is a holding and operations consulting company for a portfolio of franchises. John had happened to be in town that week, and we just really enjoyed being around each other. We hit it off. We had just a lot of fun. And he said, "Hey, I'm looking to bring in new operators, potentially new investors into my holding company." And so we just found a way to get involved together instead. And when instead of going and opening up those city rows, we found a way to work with the company Franworth just to begin to learn much more about franchising first, to see if maybe we can get involved at maybe a higher level than than being a franchise owner. And I still believe that I would have had a lot of fun owning and running those franchises. But the world took me in a different direction, and I'm glad it did, because I think it's given me the opportunity now to apply lessons learned from John, myself, other of his partners, to build out Franchise 123. So the way that we started Franchise 123 though was I noticed that they had this line item on their P&L that was consulting fees, and it was a significant amount every quarter. We started to dive into more as to what those consulting fees are. And I started to realize they are commissions paid to brokers to sell franchises for them, and began to ask him more about that. And he said, one thing about franchising is typically it's not a core competency of the franchisor to know how to sell, to know how to generate leads, and to know how to sell and expand their units. So we will engage with the broker, or we will engage with a lead portal to drive a bunch of leads, and we'll try to sell. But as we talked more, we started to share the same sentiment that world is full of just completely misaligned interest. The commissions paid to brokers are high.
Yeah.
It doesn't mean that brokers don't do good work, but it's tough as an emerging brand to pay those types of commissions to brokers. 50% of your franchise fee going towards commission. And when you are a young emerging brand, you rely on those franchise fees to help support your operation, because it could be a year, 2 years before you start to see any real significant revenue from royalties come in your door. And so I said, is there a way to solve for this problem? And we spent a couple days together. We started to identify the problems in the industry really being two things. Portal leads are, you get a bunch of them, but they're typically lower, poor quality. And from a broker perspective, it works, but it's expensive. And is there a way to add a new element to the sales process? It's not our ambition here to fully disrupt the broker market or the portals, but we think there might be potentially a better way. So we began to build out, and happy to go into all the details, the concept of Franchise 123, which is franchising made simple. We said the world needs more access to more franchises. So essentially, we built out this MLS or Zillow for franchising, where now you can go on to franchise123.com and you can answer a couple questions, create a free account, and now you have access to over 4,000 different brands to learn about, to research, to identify the right one, and ultimately decide on the best fit for you. Different than a typical broker model, which does work, but they might have 15 or so companies they can provide you access to, where we have the ability to provide them access to over 4,000 different brands to start to compare and really hone in on what's the best decision for them.
Sure. So that's quite interesting. How does that differ to some of the other portals then, maybe like a Franchise Direct or someone like this?
Sure. So Franchise Direct provides a great wealth of information. And then when you go on and you have an account, or when you click that you're interested, that interested lead goes back towards that brand. Franchise Direct sells that lead to the brand, and the brand pays them for that lead essentially. Our model is different in the sense that when the franchisor signs up, they pay an annual subscription fee, and then they can do add-on components. We have a CRM system, we have dashboards, we have a number of different things they can do to see the performance of their profile. But you can actually go on and engage and essentially go through the whole discovery day process online now. And so what happens is you are effectively able to buy a franchise online. We're building out an auction portal for resales as well. So the objective here is to digitize the buying process, where a Franchise Direct, what they do is they provide that top of the funnel lead. We actually provide the whole kind of start to finish concept.
Yeah. Okay. Interesting. And how does that feel for somebody who's maybe looking at franchises, to potentially invest in? What's the difference between doing that and going for a portal or going for a broker for them? We're talking about kind of personalizing it for the individuals. So what's it like for the buyer in this scenario with Franchise 123?
Sure. So the experience is the buyer goes on, they create a quick account, and then you can see all 4,000 brands there. They start to click on their preferences. So we take them through a questionnaire, and then the algorithm starts to pair them up with the best fits for them. And it might narrow them down from 4,200 brands down to about 100. Then you can get side by side comparisons of all of them. You can start to type in new important criteria for you. And then ultimately, it's our objective for the potential buyer to narrow it down to about 10. We then have a pretty extensive workbook that they can utilize to help them go through and assess from 10 to 5 to 3 to 2 to 1. And that might include franchisor interviews, franchise disclosure document reviews, franchise interviews of people who may become your future peers, legal reviews, all the things necessary to help you go through that right process to actually effectively hone in and buy. So the difference is we have the ability to we have the largest consortium of information, so we have the ability for you to compare and contrast in depth as many brands as you would like. So we have over 4,000 franchise disclosure documents on there available to read and review. We have the ability to engage directly with the brand, and those brands whose brand isn't just on our portfolio, but they have actually gone in and signed up on the franchise or side. What they can do is they can update their information, they can upload their videos, they can upload their presentations, and now you have everything you need to know about that brand in one place to go through that buying experience. So I'd say the biggest differentiator really is just that wealth of information that's available on the brands on our platform.
Okay, cool. So you talked there about narrowing down from 4,000 down to 100, 10 to 5, to the number that's going to be manageable for somebody to research effectively. What what kind of things do you think somebody who's maybe looking at buying into franchising, what do they need to be considering fairly high level from the first moment? How can they, how do you guys help them to narrow it down, and what advice would you give to somebody to narrow down their search from these thousands of brands?
So the first piece of advice would be to be open-minded that there may be other companies and opportunities that may be a better fit for you than you may have originally intended. The majority of buyers we do see say, "Hey, I'd like to own this business or that business." And so they just contact them, they run down the rabbit hole, and that's what they try to do. We're trying to help understand that perhaps a better research process is going to help increase the likelihood of long-term success for you. With a failure rate potentially being as high as 1.5, we think that a lot of that it boils down to either being misguided or improper selection of the franchise that's really a good fit for you. So to make it simple, we have the first part of the process we call the non-negotiables. These are the things that the person must have. They say, "I would like a franchise, but I have to be located here. My my financial position is here. These are the top 5 industries I'm interested in." And then when you go through those questions, now you've already begun to narrow down from 4,000 down to maybe a couple hundred. Then we take them through a questionnaire that goes into their passions, their work experience, industries they're interested in, and we can really start to narrow it down from that couple hundred down to say about 50. Now you've got 50 good options you can look through and you can say, "Yeah, not interested in this because of XYZ. I am interested in this." And it doesn't stop them from clicking on the Chick-fil-A or the one that they may have thought they wanted to be a part of, but it does allow them to compare and contrast and say, "Yeah, Chick-fil-A, cream of the crop, but gosh, it's an expensive one to open. What if I could open up this Flippers Pizza instead? Because the market's calling for that. It'd be easier to run, quicker to open, XYZ." And
Yeah.
so now they're able to actually go on and give it a fair look. So I would say that process doesn't take long. It's an hour or so to just go through everything. And I'd say that really is probably the most critical part there, just being open-minded that there may be some other opportunities for you.
Yeah, I think it's a really interesting point. I think the same as you, my impression of the franchise and industry was that it's a food and beverage world, right? And like you said, there's this whole host of other industries, other businesses that you can tap into. I've seen everything from dog walking through to website development through to accountancy and yeah, I mean the list keeps on going, right? There's so many different things out there that actually you might not have considered something that could actually be right for you. And I guess what you're saying there is the software or the questionnaire will help you to kind of look at those various different options and not just click on food and beverage, because that's where, like say, chicken fillet is based or something like this. So yeah, I think it's really interesting points. So being across that many brands, then you must know some of these industries pretty well and see which ones are doing particularly well at this point in time. So for 2022, as we're at the beginning of the year, have you got any kind of thoughts on what industries or sectors are going to have a good year?
Sure. I think the most interesting industry within franchising is the home services industry. I think that the pandemic really pushed people towards home improvement, and they're working and living in their home, and so you've got people who are improving their garages, making their backyard look nicer, doing making sure that proper maintenance is being done to their home, doing home improvement, and so there are some interesting franchisors within that space that I think are emerging that will be really successful. I think the work from home concept is here to stay. Even as people are starting to make their way back into the office, you see some people in a couple days a week, couple hours a week, and their home office situation is just better. And so that's an area where I think uh, that you'll see a lot of focus. Of course, during the pandemic, there were a lot of spinoffs from your traditional boutique fitness concepts, where these physical locations shut down temporarily, and so you saw some spinoffs where they were doing in-home membership tutorials and in-home videos and all those things. I think those brands that have taken their concept and begin to digitize it will also start to see, or are already seeing, a fair bit of success. And there's this kind of interesting thought where people think, oh goodness, if you're doing your in-home workouts, you're no longer going to want to come into the gym. That's just not true. People like the community, they like the push, they like the physical coach there. But we are seeing that those brands that people are investing in, that have an in-home fitness component, are starting to thrive now as well.
Okay, yeah, it's really interesting. It's a good point about the home improvement stuff. I've got this office that I'm in right now that I built over the COVID period. So yeah, definitely lots more people thinking like that. And yeah, I know at some point it's going to need maintenance as well. So it's unlikely to be me doing that. So I get where you're coming from completely on that side. Um, okay, so what one kind of final question around that, and then I'm gonna go move on to some of my kind of stock questions. But what do you see is the kind of your forecast for franchising over the next 12 months or so in general? Not necessarily in terms of sectors, but in general, what's your forecast for the franchising industry?
So we are starting to see people continue to grow in terms of wanting to take their own destiny in their own hands. Right. I think that the pandemic really pushed that initiative for people faster. People don't necessarily want to relive what they may have lived through during the pandemic in terms of job security, whether it was losing jobs, layoffs, or even just the insecurity of, I don't know what's going to happen next. We're starting to see people say, I'd like to get into business for myself because of that. In addition, with the way the market has been, there are a lot of people who may have a little more cash than expected as well. And we're starting to see them invest further in concepts like franchising. So I believe that franchising will slightly outpace the rest of the startup market. And we're seeing that now. I mean, we're seeing just a lot of interested parties. We've had nearly 70,000 contacts in just the last quarter go onto our platform, create accounts, and say, look, we're interested in and doing something here. And most of them were, I would consider them kind of corporate refugee. For example, you've got someone who may have worked 15 years in a similar job, and they say, look, I want to go and do something on my own now. I've got some savings, I like to go and do that. And that's really our traditional client who's on our platform.
Yeah, really interesting, and makes a lot of sense too. So Onto my kind of stock questions then. I'm wondering, in terms of your career, what's been the funniest, strangest, or weirdest moment you've ever experienced?
That's a good question. So I'd say the the weirdest moments were for me were more in the healthcare space. I'm sure I've got some fun, strange moments in franchising, but in healthcare, you get to deal with a wide variety of people, right? So, and we were doing more kind of innovative things in healthcare that often got lots of pushback. So I was speaking at a conference, the World Medical Tourism Conference, and I'd say we had a lot of fans of our business at the time, but we also had a lot of opposition. And a person asked at the end during the discussion a relatively divisive question, kind of more or less, how do you feel so good about bucking the trends of what people have learned in healthcare for 15 years and in medical school, and how do you feel about telling us that our medical school's training was wrong, essentially? And before I could answer, I mean, essentially a fight broke out in the crowd,
Oh
and
wow.
someone else just said, you know, how about you be more open-minded and understand that what you learned 15 years ago, you may not necessarily stand the test of time. And back and forth and back and forth. And I got to kind of watch from afar as an observer this fight break out in the crowd over this discussion. So
It sounds like they had a fair point, that second person, but I mean,
I didn't really know what to do at that point in time, and time had run up, and I just kind of said thank you and walked off the stage. So
let the referees come in and and call the end of the round or something. Yeah, wow. You don't expect that, do you, at a conference? You're normally quite subdued, the crowds.
yeah, there's got to be some backstory there. I kept trying to get the backstory. Do these people know each other? Why did one person love us so much and one person was so divisive about it? I couldn't quite. I just kind of saw people shrug. I don't know. I don't know what happened.
Heat at the moment. Was there drinks at the kind of conference or something, or was it? Yeah.
Uh, Maybe it was a hangover because it was 9 o'clock in the morning. So
Yeah, there you go. Oh, too much caffeine, maybe something like that. Cool. So, next question is what's been the most kind of proud and inspiring moments in your career?
sure. I think for me, it's just been the idea of starting businesses, creating hope and opportunity, and the teams that we built around it, the pride and the passion, the excitement that we built. That leads to some good, fun stories. That leads to a lot of great memories. It leads to really helping to grow people's careers. So I have one person specifically that she joined us as as a sales rep at Leisure Spine Institute, and she grew quickly into a senior trainer role, and then she moved with me as we moved on, and she became the COO for our regenerative medicine solutions company. And now she's working on behalf of a family office, doing some exceptional things in her career. She was always very talented, but I don't know, for whatever reason, it seemed like she had been overlooked. And that one for me is really awesome because she's a high powered, very capable executive now, doing a lot of incredible things. And I feel a bit like I played a bit of a part in finding her and to create that opportunity for her. And I'd say we have a number of other stories very similar to that, but that's one in particular I'm really proud of.
Yeah, that's really cool. I mean, you talked about some big numbers actually early on in your career and achievements you made there, and it's really telling about your personality. I think that thing there, that one helping that one person a little bit along the way is worth way more than all those figures, all the revenue, all the numbers. So yeah, that's really cool. And then my final question, obviously we've spoken a bit about franchising and how to narrow down kind of the search, but if you could give anybody who's looking to buy their own franchise one piece of advice, what would that one piece of advice be?
I think it goes back to something I might have said it earlier, which is just be prepared to do the research and be open minded. We encourage people to go onto our platform because we provide such a large wealth of information. And so I think even if it's just spending an hour or so, if you think about the amount of time you spend planning what you're going to eat, where you're going to go on vacation. A lot of time it exceeds that hour. This is your financial future, your financial security. It's your family's nest egg. These are important things, and so I really just encourage people to. Whether they go onto our platform or they're just researching and reading on their own, just to do the research and be open minded that there might be another concept. If you are looking at opening up 1, 3, or 5 units, understand there's over 4,000 concepts out there, and there may just be a better fit for you than the initial one that you had thought. And then do the research, just spend the time, do the research, do the work that goes into it. And then when you're there, just work on making that right decision. And I think that you'll have a much higher likelihood of success in your future endeavors in franchising.
Fantastic. Jimmy, thank you so much for your time today. It's been a real pleasure speaking with you. And thank you for sharing your stories and advice with us today.
Thanks. I appreciate you having me, Ed. And this has been a pleasure, and I look forward to hearing it and also listening to some of your future shows.
Awesome. Jimmy, thanks again. Take care.
Take care. Thank you.